Okay. We're now live on YouTube with a delay. Does your stuff delay on whenever you do that restream?
I don't know. I think people like LinkedIn Live will have a delay from the main feed if you're trying to watch them simultaneously. But
Yeah, that kind of screwed me up the first time we tried it. So, all right, let's get this recorded. And we are now recording. So, hey everyone, this is a first here. So we have Ryan Reisert, who is really the reason that we started this podcast. So a hat tip to you, Ryan. Thanks so much for kicking me in the backside to get me going and talking with James Bowden to get this cranking. But Ryan is really interesting, right? So he's on the Pacific Coast. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, my time, 5 o'clock in the morning. He's been up and rolling. He's cranking things. It's almost like watching a documentary of building out a business, what Ryan's doing. So really interesting stuff. So if you don't know him yet, follow Ryan Reisert on LinkedIn. So today we're going to be talking about the concept that he's been talking about, which is called buckets. Super simple to understand, maybe not as easy to execute, but really getting down to buckets and the idea that the list is your strategy. So with that said, welcome, Ryan, man.
hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited for the conversation today, Brian.
Yeah, me too. So here's the deal, gang. Get your notepads and pencils because Ryan is one of the smartest guys that I know, wicked fast on what he's doing. So we got to try to keep up with him. So I guess the first question we always ask here, Ryan, is, why in the world should we listen to you about buckets? I mean, what in the world is buckets? How does that relate to sales development and list? I mean, where's the tie-in?
Yeah, yeah. If you're certain people in the echo chamber, then you shouldn't because it's bullshit, right? Math to sales is bullshit. Buckets are bullshit. You know, all you have to do is know how to sell, and things will happen for you. But if you're, I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called the 10-Day MBA. So if you're even an MBA, I guess I don't have one myself, but and you like the maths of marketing, the maths of sales, you like to look at a business case using data, then you probably should listen to me because what I like to say is your math of sales, it never lies, and buckets is a simple system to help you execute against your top of funnel go to market, leveraging the kind of levers that would run through your sales or marketing funnel, right? All coming down to target, message, channel, timing, and follow. And what that means is like, who are we targeting? What are we saying? Where are we saying it? And follow up. And I've spent the last 12 years or so, and I specialize in companies you don't know anything about, and I help them get their first few $1 million in revenue. Or I've started a few companies myself now, but on the software side, software as a service, I cut my teeth in the recession. So the last time it was hard to sell, that's when I learned all of this stuff. And, fast forward 13, 14 years later, I guess 13 years now, 13 and a half, whatever that is. I can't do math apparently after I just said that. I continue to spend most of my time trying to help people that are just trying to figure it out, put in those fundamentals to get started. So that's
Yeah,
maybe why you want to talk to me. I don't know.
yeah. So let's uncover that a little bit because math of sales. For those who don't know, what in the world is math of sales? I mean, isn't sales an art? I'm really good at talking to people. What's this math of sales stuff?
Exactly. You're one of those guys. You're one of those sales trainers. You're one of the sales gurus that just says, "Hey, look, it's the psychology. Persuade them, handle objections, and drive them through to the sale." Right? The reality is that people buy products that actually serve them. Right? First and foremost, if you don't have a product that actually solves a problem, like it actually works, you're going to be in big trouble. So old school sales, old school sales being the psychology of sales. Well, there's kind of a place for that. It really doesn't work in the modern era, in my opinion. The ratings and reviews of what you do are going to either make or break your business these days. So you have to have a great product or service. Otherwise you're not going to be successful at all. And then so that's the one. No matter what, doesn't matter what you do. The second piece is now you have to create demand. And so what the math of sales is all about is helping you understand, I call your math of sales. So from the very, very top, in your total addressable market, right? How many people could you serve that actually have a problem or have a need or a want for something that you're selling, right? So at the very, very top is your total addressable market. That's a number, right? There's only a finite number. It's not infinite, right? There's a finite number of buyers, and that's the very top of the pyramid on the math numbers. That's where the numbers come in.
Yeah, and I'll interrupt you there. For those of you founders, for those of you business owners, that if you don't know that number, you're already starting behind the eight ball, because to say, oh, there's a whole bunch, or oh my gosh, they're everywhere, to use a Queen's English, ain't the case. So keep going.
Well, that's right. And so that's where the numbers come in, right? The math, the sales, the math, marketing, we look at it. So you got to understand or have an idea of what that looks like. All of this is, by the way, a model and a hypothesis or so it's got to start somewhere though, right? What is that number? And so from there, you're just starting to drive the funnel. You're trying to drive the funnel of all the people you can serve. There's a concept called the buyer's pyramid. Chet Holmes talks about this in his book, The Ultimate Sales Machine. The late Chet Holmes. He's no longer around. Otherwise, I would love to just continue to pick that guy's brain. But yeah, right. In any total addressable market, any market, 3% of that market's buying now, 7% they're open to it, 30% are not really thinking about it, and then the rest of the 60% are either not, they know they're not interested or don't think they're interested, right? So you flip that over, you got a funnel. If you look at it from a pyramid perspective, you're targeting that 40% at any given time. And if you're smart and you run what I call market dominance, which we wrote an ebook on with Chris Beal, you're really trying to get to that, 8.5 to 10%, those who are buying and those who are open to it at any given time, right? So you've got your total addressable market. You got an idea of how many folks are in a certain window, but the reality is you don't know until you talk to people. So the math of sales is about taking that number and trying to work your model into, how many activities does it take to earn a conversation with somebody in that market? Of those conversations, how many of those are interested in learning more and taking a meeting or getting some information? Of those, how many of those actually take a meeting and are a qualified opportunity right now? Again, we're moving into that 8.5, 10%. How many of those do you forecast as a potential deal? And then how many of those do you win? There's other ratios in there, but the math of sales is a model to help you actually map your strategy from the list of your market so that you can pay attention to, are we targeting the right people with the right message in the right channels at the right time to really drive our business forward and capture market share. Understanding your math of sales will really help you understand if you're on track and or where you can make adjustments to continue to optimize along the way.
Yeah, and the brilliance that I see in this. So back in my old training days, we used to talk about cookbooks and reverse engineering. What your activity levels needed to be in order to get the revenue number that you wanted. So to better, more accurately forecast. And that's really what you're doing is the same thing using Chet Holmes' pyramid to take those. And my sense is there's likely a couple of things that come out of this. One, I can better forecast. Two, I can better coach, mentor, and train my people, because if the ratios are off, well, now because I have a mechanism, I have a machine, I have the math of sales, I can go back and look at my benchmarks and figure out how can I tweak just a little bit to improve these numbers. Because my sense is, if I tweak the number, especially at that top of the funnel, if I get a 0.25%, 0.5%, 1%, 2%, that's likely going to have a massive impact on the bottom of the funnel, meaning revenue coming through the bottom of the funnel. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you can double your connect rate, which is only a 2% if you can go from a 2% to a 4% connect rate, right? 2% increase in your connect rate in terms of total of the percentage, that can downstream have an impact of doubling your productivity, right? You're doubling conversations overnight.
Yep. So let's put that in real world. So meaning average right now is about 2 to 3%, right? I make 100 attempts. I'm going to have a conversation with only 2 to 3 people. So
That's
whenever
right.
you're beating up your salespeople and wondering what they're doing all day, they're making 100 attempts to talk to 2 to 3 people. That's the average right now. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Now, so instead of beating up your people, you might want to beat up how you're getting your list, because that is your market. And that's one of the key things that I learned from you, Ryan, is that the market, or the list, is your strategy. So let's touch on list a little bit, and then we'll come back to this math of sales. Um, if I see that my attempts per connection rate, now you call it completions, I think. And a completion is, to you, is not only when I connect with somebody, meaning the actual person that I wanted to picks up the phone, yellow, but then I'm able to go through my whole entire opening, curiosity statement, whatever we want to call it, value prop, and then the call to action. If I'm able to go through all of that, that's in your world considered a completion, correct?
Yeah, it's a new, I think, great, what do we call it, metric or outcome that just tells the story. Some people call that a meaningful conversation, but there's some subjectivity to that. And I've taken that verb, or whatever that word is, whatever that is, the describing word, adjective, is that what it is? I don't know.
Something
I'm
like
not a
that.
language. Uh, Completions comes from a book, Telephone Prospecting in the 80s.
Okay.
There's it was sent to me from Noah Goldman, and it's so funny because it's like, hey, this is even before the connect and sell era. It's like, it doesn't matter if you do 50 attempts or 100 attempts. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is completion. And again, that completion is, I got you on the phone, Brian. You didn't just hang up or say I'm busy or whatever. You said, yeah, sure. What's going on? How can I help you? And I told you why I was calling. And at the end of that call, it could be a yes, it could be a no, it could be, maybe it's not me, it's a referral, it's not me, and whatever. It could be a meeting, it could be whatever. But they heard what you had to say, and there is a next action. You've decided as a sales professional that you're going to either follow up or take them out of your follow up cadence or your sequence or whatever you want to call it. And I call that the list, your follow up
Yeah.
list, because the list is your strategy.
So if I'm finding that I cannot get that I'm not getting the connection rates or my completion rates, that could be a couple of things. So if I'm not getting the dial to connection rate, then that is most likely the list. Is that an accurate understanding? Because it gets to understanding your numbers and understanding what the story is that they're telling you, and that's the real power that I think that's behind this. Correct?
Yeah, well, so if you're looking at completions and something's going on there, there's two things that you're going to be looking at. One is your phone number list, right? Because if you're talking about the phone, so you could get a completion through other channels as well, right? If you're using
Yes.
social or email, but we're talking about the phone. All channels remain the same, right? Like, can I reach them at all, right? You should have you can see this in my whiteboard behind me, right? Have conversations with people who answer the phone. Send emails to people who open, you know, have engage and what does it say? Connect with those who are active on social, but really know who isn't, and then you follow up accordingly. And what that means is, um, when you're talking about connect rates and completion rates, there's two levers there. One is the list and the contact information itself. Like, that could be a list challenge. Are you buying data from a vendor? Are you researching data that's accurate? Is the data that you're finding online good data or not? Or if you're buying it, how old is it? How cheap are you? And trying to buy these old databases versus like putting the effort into getting the best data before you start to do these activities. So that's certainly a contact information list problem, right? If you're
Right.
just not getting enough reaches or connects, right? Depending on how you think about what channel you're looking at. But completions is a function of list and message, target and message, right? So there's contact information itself, but there's also who you're trying to target, how high in an organization, how big is an organization, what's the role within that organization that's going to impact what channels you might use, right?
Right.
The example here is, we're in sales, so people love LinkedIn. Well, LinkedIn makes a lot of sense for sales and marketers, right? That's where they spend a tremendous amount of time. But the average B2B professional on LinkedIn, of all their users, outside of sales and marketers, spends only 15 minutes a month on LinkedIn.
That's interesting.
Now I got that stat from an individual who's running this kind of social referral system, and it's new technology. So I'm not sure where he got that stat from, but it blew my mind. I was like, huh, that's very interesting. And he seems to know his stuff. He's building a product around this. So what that means is people spend a lot of time in channels that maybe don't make sense, right? So if you're targeting CISOs, right, and you're spending a bunch of time on LinkedIn, I don't know how much time they spend on LinkedIn, or even CEOs, right? I don't know how much time they spend on LinkedIn. Same thing for email, same thing for phone. And so when you're looking at the list and the connect and completion ratios, it's one thing about the target, the contact information itself, and then it's about the individual, right? So some people with even within all those things I just said, someone's going to tell me, well, yeah, I reach out to CISOs on LinkedIn. Yeah, some are on LinkedIn. That's true. Some do pick up the phone, by the way. It's about 1% versus like a 3% cold on like a CIO or a CSO list versus a CEO list, right? 1% versus 3%, which is interesting, right? But some people like emails. Others like me will add you to spam if you cold email me because I'm tired of my inbox getting blown up by a bunch of automation, right?
Right.
And then same thing with social, right? Some people are there, some people are not. So you've got to be able to think about your list in terms of, one, making sure it is somebody that you actually want to engage, right? So when we talk, we're going back to buckets now. Before you do any activities, really making sure that this really is the companies, you target companies, you sell the people. The companies and the people that if you got any engagement with, it's worth your damn time. That sounds fundamental and simple, but I can't tell you how many organizations go out, buy data, don't spend the time actually like looking at the freaking companies and the records. They just load it up into their spam weapons and go at it. And it's like, it's just not relevant, right? Like you're looking for security and you're reaching out to security guards. Like all you had to do is look at the damn, like just do a couple extra clicks, right? Or, not be wasteful and buy data from a database in that way, right? So that's just an easy example. Seems simple, but people do that, but they just try to cut corners, and that's where it's at. So you got to make sure that, one, you're targeting the right people and companies, and then two, you have an idea, going back to math of sales and in the buckets concept of what's a benchmark and what do I expect those connect or reach rates to look like. So like you said, is there an opportunity to improve based on that benchmark, right? I could take that list, call it, I only have one connect, to your point, 2 or 3. Is there an opportunity? Well, shit, it's CIOs. No, it's actually, the benchmark is actually 1%. So we're okay versus, over here, founders of startups pick up at 15% and I'm getting a 1%. Well, that's a contact data information, contact information problem, right? I'm rambling a bit, but I'll let you. I don't know if I'm answering the question specifically.
No, you are, and you're giving a lot of good insight and feedback. So that's why I'm letting you go on. So I appreciate that. So the other part of that is, okay, so you talked about from the call, the out attempt, and he's 100% right? If you're not using multi-channel, you're going to get crushed. So the curious thing is, Ryan said, if you email me cold, I'm putting you on a spam list. Whereas if you cold call somebody else, they're brutal with you because they hate cold calls. It's not all things for all people. There's no magic bullet. And that's why if you don't know, should I reach out through phone? Should I do email? Should I do social? Should I do snail mail? How important is that person that you're trying to contact, and what's your average contract value, what your lifetime value of the customer? If you don't know these things and you're just you read a book and you're trying to implement what they suggested off of that book and you have no idea all of these ancillary and important set pieces of the puzzle, you're really going to get yourself in trouble. I mean, there are story upon story of people that sell themselves out of business because the cost of customer acquisition is more than the profit that they're going to see. And they're wondering why they're losing money. It's just insane that people don't know this. So I guess a side note, any sense, I mean, any sense why people don't work at this? Is it a lack of understanding? Like, hey, sales, you just got to be a people person, go out there and go get them, killer. Or why do you think this is happening still?
I mean, if you're asking my opinion,
Yes.
yeah, because I don't know, but I have an opinion. I mean, I think in general, there's this conflict between sales and marketing, and uh, when it comes to new business acquisition, most really good salespeople, when you think about like a traditional salesperson, they've grown their careers through sticking. Google talks about riding a wave. Right? There's this book, How Google Works. Eric Schmidt and Jonathan, whatever his name is, wrote this book, like How Google Works, and they talk about like pick an industry and ride that wave, right? So you might move around, but you're in the same industry. So a lot of really good salespeople make their hay through referrals, right? You go to most training. I haven't been through a professional training program, but I hear all the trainers say, "Oh, you got to work your referrals. Got to work your referrals." Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but um, uh, unfortunately, a lot of new businesses that are trying to figure this out, they don't have a huge network. They can't grow their business through referrals. It's not scalable, right?
Right.
You can't do that. And so salespeople think about leads in the form of, hey, we're already across the table from one another, and there's probably already some sort of interest and alignment, right? That's why you're here. And there's $1 billion plus training and coaching industry around, how do you take a meeting and drive it through the sales process? And even then people fuck that up left and right. But uh, but that's kind of how people think about it. I just need a lead. I need a meeting. Get me a lead. I'll close it. Um, Unfortunately, like the proliferation of technology and capital, and just the fact that we live in this new modern world that everyone should be blessed to be living in. I don't know why everyone's so damn pissed off all the time. Uh, it's created a lot more competition, a lot more Me Too's, a lot more noise, and you've got to be able to stand out, right? And how do you do that? I mean, most people just do it through spam. Let me just throw my noise, let me just throw my message out there and see what sticks. B2B marketers, which is what we're talking about. This is not sales. It's just not sales. And whoever tells you sales development is sales, it's telemarketing, it's modern outbound. You're just delivering an ad via the human channel, right? And unfortunately, when they do the automations, it's not human anymore. So again, it's just marketing. It's what it is. So salespeople don't understand marketing, and when it comes to marketing, there is already books and books and books and books around all this stuff, right? You go to a B2C marketer, they know their ratios from cart, from the time someone gets in the cart, which is a closed one, right? What percent close? How many are abandoned? What got them there? They're always testing. There's a landing page. They're always testing. They're always testing. Unfortunately, B2B is way behind the curve there, and they can't wrap their mind in the fact that they should be doing a lot of the digital stuff in this modern era, even before they put humans on it. But somebody in a book, like you said, hey, go hire inside sales reps, SDRs. Aaron Ross started the movement, I guess. Hey, we need SDRs. We need leads. We need SDRs. Go figure it out. And the reality is that's the most expensive way for you to drive success at the top of the funnel, especially if you don't have this process in place to understand your math of sales. You have zero idea what you're paying. You don't even know. A lot of the companies don't even know what their average deal value is. It's insane. Big companies, you ask them that question. They're like, oh, well, it depends. No, it doesn't depend. You have X amount of customers that pay X amount of dollars. What's the freaking average value? Like, it doesn't depend. It's a number.
Yeah, well, and they don't know that, and then their cost of customer acquisition, they don't know that one either, because they think, oh, it's just what the cost of the lead is that I got from SEO or Facebook ads or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And that's not it at all. And especially whenever, like I was, Chris Walker had a post this morning that talked about 1% of all marketing qualified leads end up closing the business. 1%. I mean, that's insane whenever you think about the quantity that needs to go through there. Go ahead. You had a comment.
No, that's interesting, because is that an updated stat? I have a article from HubSpot. I just realized it's back from like 15, and it says 2%, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me. If that's an updated stat, I would love love to read up on that. Doesn't
Yep.
surprise me that it's going down, right? It's cut in
Well,
half.
correct, because it's insanely noisy out there. So
Well,
how do you stand out?
and MQL is also subjective, right?
Yes.
That's the problem with that. Like what you define as a MQL, Brian, some organizations say that that's like a visit to their website. And, and this is where there's the conflict between outbound and inbound. I mean, those are both made up terms.
Right.
Inbound is a made up term from HubSpot. Uh, Outbound is a made up term from, I don't know whoever the hell it is, but I've rode that wave with outbound sales no fluff, but I call it modern outbound, which is, it's just marketing, right? That's all it is. It's marketing. So, you either have someone in your awareness, consideration, conversion funnel, or you have them in your sales funnel, right? Like conversion towards a, an next action at B2B, which is, hey, let's take a meeting. Unfortunately, that's the metric that I think is killing the whole concept of sales development versus understanding the role of being to actually take this big ass list of your entire TAM and work them through to try to identify who's buying now. And timing is the biggest factor that no one can control until you've talked to everybody. And even when you've talked to everybody, unfortunately, because salespeople suck so bad doing this work, not every salesperson sucks, but it's doing this work that people lied to you, right? Like they don't, and maybe they're not lying. They're just not giving you all the information that you would like to see because they're just trying to get the annoying flies out of their hair. It's not a priority, and you don't respect that. So if you're not talking to everybody in your TAM every quarter, and that takes time to get there, you're never going to be in a position where you can predict the outcome. So everybody's looking for these hacks. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the definition of an MQL, it's like somebody's number, pipeline number, and all this stuff is incentivized around that. And it doesn't surprise me that the success rate on that is continuing to drop. In this case, it's cut in half since 15. It sounds like, I don't know when that, if you look at HubSpot's data around what's happened since the pandemic, I mean, holy shit. Emails are up over like 100 and something percent with responses down over 30%.
Correct. So
spam. It's like there needs to be an Emerald remake of this. Actually, I'm going to have James do this video instead of it being bam, bam, bam. It's going to be like spam.
So let's transition off of that over to your buckets concept, right? Because you said that salespeople are really bad at that. And it was kind of an open, broad statement. So whenever you say bad at that, be a little bit more specific on what that means, and then we'll transition into the bucket conversation then.
Bad at, I think salespeople are bad at putting in the long-term work of not now and follow-up, right? So they think that everything needs to happen right now. It's an opportunity right now. It's a yes or no right now. And they don't spend the time to really get to a situation where it's like, hey, do you potentially have a problem, or may you potentially have a problem or a need, right? For what I do, from the onset, they don't take the time to do that. They're very focused on, hey, do you want to buy now or not? Next. They're terrible at spending the time up front, understanding who you are, what your role is, what the organization looks like today, what it might look like tomorrow. Will you be there tomorrow? Who knows? Like there's just too much changes around that. Most salespeople are all around the money today and not thinking long-term. And it's about the immediate interest of closing the business right now, but also the work it takes to continue to follow up and nurture it in a way that actually benefits the individual that you're trying to do business with. Right. Yeah, and I live by that simple rule: solve a problem or go away. People don't understand what the hell that means. Doesn't mean, hey, I'm just checking in, taking base, want to buy my shit now. It's like, based on what we talked about, where you're at as an organization, where you're trying to go, right? I want to know as much as I can right now. And most of the time I talk to people, it's just like, I don't think you're ready for all the things I do. I'd go here and here and here and here first, see you later.
Yeah, exactly. I just had that conversation.
And honestly, I'm not going to put you in my follow-up list, right? At Connect and Sell, because I don't think you're ever a fit for me. Like, I'm just going to know that. Like, it's like, you have to have the right mental mindset to work with me, because I don't have patience to work with people that are never going to get it. And I can tell right away when someone's not going to get it. and I don't want to spend my time babysitting you. You can go get educated through like these types of things and the content that I put out. And if you ever want to come back once your light bulbs go on, that's fine. But me personally, my North Star is working with people who get it, because those who get it are going to be a much better customer for me. And at Connect and Sell last year, my other experiment of being an AE for a year with those guys, right? And I didn't expect the pandemic to hit. Otherwise, it would have been an even better year. But everybody at Connect and Sell has these massive lists of like thousands of people in their follow-ups who they're not getting to as often as they should, et cetera, which is just what every rep does. So they're kind of just like making it difficult for even Connect and Sell to execute on the strategy of like, hey, you got to talk to everybody all the time, right? So I was doing it in the beginning. Obviously, with the pandemic, people were churning and things like that. I was like, you know what? There's no point of following up with everybody no matter what. Like, I'm only going to follow up if, in fact, I think it's worth follow up. And my follow up list is about 10% of the rest of the team, right? 10%. Theirs is 1,000, mine's 100. But these are 100 people when it comes to buckets, right? These are my priority follow ups. These are people I've spoken to and I want to speak to again. I want to, right?
Yeah.
And I took the time to look at a few signals to determine if that's the case or not. Now, I still don't, it's not perfect, right? It's always a hypothesis until there's a conclusion. Did I miss out on potential other people that could have potentially been persuaded or convinced? No. Yes, that's probably true. But when I focused on my follow-up, those are the lists that have the highest propensity of moving forward when the time's right. And I want to keep that tight and as bestly managed as possible, and not missing out on those, the cadence for follow-up.
Okay, so let's talk about. So we keep bringing up this idea of buckets. We keep saying that. So, and forgive me for waiting this long for those of you who are listening. Let's define what those buckets are, Ryan. So give us an overview of what the buckets are.
Yeah, and if you want, Brian, I can send a link to the guide for people who are listening afterwards if you want to publish it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The free guide to buckets, so people can look at this. It's out of chapter 6 in the book. So buckets is just a simple methodology at the top of the funnel that gives you stage definitions and exit criteria. So you can think about the marketing you're doing, the outbound selling that you're doing, just like you think about the selling that you're doing from an opportunity forward. So there's 4 buckets, just to simplify it. Bucket 1 through 4. The first bucket is the top of the funnel. We call that bucket 1. These are all of the accounts and contacts that you want to be potentially doing business with, your next best customers, your hypothesis. Is it perfect? No, but it's the people that you're targeting now, right? Target companies, sell to people. So that's bucket 1. Bucket 2 is once you've began to do outreach, you move to these are people that everything's building on itself. So they're from bucket 1, who you've attempted at least one time, and you've documented the outcome of that first attempt, and you've made the decision that you want to tempt them again. So what does that mean? For phone, you make sure that the number that you're calling, looks like it's a number that's worth calling. For email, the frickin' email delivered. It just sounds simple, but it is what it is. People.
It doesn't start with name of info or sales.
Right. It's exactly exactly. If it's social, the person's active. This is the most important bucket, right? And so there's a tremendous amount of little nuanced things here that will make or break your ability to execute buckets and see the incremental lift just by going from bucket 1 to bucket 2 and paying attention to the validation steps that I'll talk about in just a second, can double the number of connects you'll have overnight, right? Take a list, go from 1 to 2, cut out the bad, focus on the ones that have a higher propensity, have 2x more conversations overnight, no technology, no headcount. That's the thing. So what does that look like? For the phone numbers that you're calling to move a record forward from bucket 1 to bucket 2, you call the number, you document the path. Well, there's a type in a path, like is it a direct, an IVR, a gatekeeper, whatever, a customer service line? Path. Again, direct, press 1, 3, 4, 5, pound. Press 2, speak their name, press 3, talk to customer service and get transferred over, those types of things. Within that, then there's the outcome. valid, not valid, connect valid, and bad. What we're really looking for is connect valid. That's where the money's made. That'll if you're the one doing this process, that's going to kick you all the way to priority 3, but bucket 3, which we'll get to in a second. But valid and not valid, this is really important. Validated is I only call a number validated if Brian, you program your name, your voicemail, your name and your voicemail. If I call a
Right.
number, I call a number, and that number reaches some generic voicemail. It's a direct, hey, hey, you've reached 34575. I didn't say Brian, even. That has a lower propensity than if you did, right? Versus not valid is you go through this path, maybe you went through a directory, even it's Brian Whittington, and I guess your voicemail is like extension 345 is not available. That has a much lower propensity to pick up. If you look at your average connect rate on just calling a list without doing the validation process versus calling a list with this validation process, by splitting into valid and not valid, you'll see just that step will have about a 20 to some cases it's much higher, but 20 to 40% increase in connect rates if you just split those up the next time around. But where the real money's made is those who pick up. Those who pick up, that's what I call connect validated. They tend to pick up again. And so those who pick up, if you just focus on those who pick up, can have an 8 to 10x from your baseline increase in dial to connects. But if you're just calling randomly and you have a bucket of what would include validated, not validated, and connect validated in this bucket, you'll always see about that 2x lift. So that's how the phone works. Email is pretty straightforward. I highly, highly recommend if you're doing email as an outreach is have a very personalized message that's automated, for the first touch. It's really easy to create a very couple sentence subject line that might get some engagement message that goes out as always your step 1. And the easiest way to do this is if you're running buckets is if you call, you get to a voicemail, you leave a voicemail, and that first message is my voicemail, right? So, my voicemail, hey, I just called and left you a voicemail. Wanted to follow up on email in case this is your channel. I'll be following up again shortly. If this, looking forward to chatting, something like that, right?
Yep.
So that email goes out. It's relevant. Now, the problem with that is if you don't reach a voicemail because the number doesn't work, then you have to come up with a different email, right? Because there's multiple channels for validation. But if you have a phone and an email that are both validated, you can try that. For emails to be validated, it's deliverable and they open. You don't do any personalization until they open. And my best practice for openings is why not, as they're opening, because you have the technology these days, record a nice little video. What's more personalized than a video? The text doesn't have to be personalized. You just say, hey, Brian, I want to introduce myself. The reason I'm reaching out is looking forward to that conversation. Hey, if it's not relevant, just let me know. I'll take you off. I take you out of my cadence here, but I think I can help in these ways. It's probably worth 5 or 10 minutes. Looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah. So, and a couple of things that we have going on here is you're doing quantity up front for the validation. So the sales enablement tools for the validation. So then you can get more customization once they're validated, because it takes time to do that customization. So if you're going to take that time, make sure it's time with the right person at the right type of company that you want to work with. I mean, it's absolutely logical. I love it.
Yeah. And then the final thing is social, right? Like all these cadence systems have you go to social and follow and connect. Again, the average B2B professional, if you're not selling to sales and marketing, it's 15 minutes a month. They don't have looking at your shit. They don't know if you viewed this whole concept of, view their profile so they know you. It's like, that's just bullshit. They're not going into this is the most egocentric bullshit I've ever heard. They're not looking at their LinkedIn and looking at their view. They're not in sales, people. Wake up. Now, if you're selling to salespeople, maybe, but even sales leaders aren't doing this. The sales rep would be. The sales rep will see that you viewed their profile because I want to lead. But even I don't know very many VPs of sales at companies you probably want to try business with that are sitting there going, oh yeah, who's viewing my profile? They're not doing that. They're busy. They're working. They're doing their own shit.
Right.
Get that out of your head. I don't care what Outreach or SalesLoft or any of these tools that sell systems to tell you to do these things are telling you to do. It's just bullshit. So don't do that until you see, oh wow, this person, is posting daily, comments on a bunch of people's posts, right? I can see this person's active. Then you might want to go and do some of those tactics, but not until then.
Yeah, and one quick way of doing that, if you just go on their profile, you can look under their activities, click posts, see what they're doing, see if they're on there. I mean, it takes a couple of seconds. So yeah, really good. All right. So we talked about bucket. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, you're spot on.
Okay. So we talked about going from bucket 1, that's cold, the great unwashed, to bucket 2, the validated list. Now we're talking about moving from bucket 2 to bucket 3.
Yeah. So now you moved. You've got the fact that, wow, I've got a validated attempt. Again, dial gets to a voicemail. You can keep calling not valid, but I would split that out. If you only have so much time in the day, which we all have, you're only calling your valids in the working bucket. And email, you're only spending time emailing people who open, and on social, only people that are active. So now from bucket 2 to bucket 3 is we've had an engagement. You picked up the phone, you replied via email, you've connected on LinkedIn. Simple. Or whatever other channel you're going to use from a social perspective. You can add any other channel and just think about what this looks like. So for people that sell, different types of products, maybe using WhatsApp or something, I have no idea, but there's different channels. Slack, I don't care. Like, they're engaging, you're DMing, right? Now you got this, now you're going to spend more time, spend more time in that channel. So those are your priorities, right? You now have a channel activated where somebody is willing to engage. Someone's responding, someone's willing to pick up the phone. Now there's a signal of, hey, they communicate in that channel. So again, next level, that's when you go and spend the time really, really trying to figure out, this is my shot. This is my, Eminem 8-mile opportunity, even though it's not really that stressful. But that's when you would spend some time really thinking about, hey, if you said no, but I really think I can help you, Brian, how am I going to come back at you? How am I going to come back at you? And I'm trying to get to that completion, right? That completion, meaning you're hearing me out and you're telling me, yes, no, not me, not now. So then you can move into bucket 4, which is a meeting scheduled. And that's really it, right? So priorities are where the money's made. You want to get as many records as possible into this channel validated, I know I can. They have a propensity to have a conversation here. And then it's just about the follow-up, right? It's all about the follow-up in this case. So if I'm a rep, I show up every day, I go, hey, what meetings do I have this week? Have they confirmed that they're going to show up? If it's within the 7th, like if it's been a week out, I want to kind of reconfirm. I'm checking that they check the damn box, right? I might send a follow-up reminder with an agenda, excited for the call. Just let me know if it's still going to work. Get all those done. Then I move to my priorities, and these are going to be, your priority lists are going to have a next attempt date. Whenever we connected and it didn't move forward, right? That's the whole point of that. I go ahead and slap in a next attempt date, and that's going to be that's when it's going to show back up on my my priority list, and I'm going to work that list, and I'm going to work that list as often as I want to, based on my engagement model. My recommendation is daily until you get back into the next conversation. To determine again if timing's ready, right? Or to try a new message, right? You got your second shot. Eminem was wrong. You got your second opportunity. You got your second chance. Once you complete that, you go to your workings. Now you're only working data that you've tried before, so there's a much higher velocity here. Getting back to that velocity concept, I'm only calling numbers that I know are working. So bang, 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 bang. Emails, I know they open, so then I can shift over and maybe I try a video and I do some really fun creative stuff, and then I get in my social and I do whatever I do, wasting my time over there, dicking around on social. Hopefully with the right people, that means it's driving success, because you can find success doing that. I get a lot of meetings in social, but I do it right. I don't just randomly freaking spray and pray on social. So once you're done with that, then you move up to, all right, I need to add new leads from my TAM, again, not just random stuff, from my list. That's your strategy. And I begin to replenish, right? Replenish. And it's really important. There's a replenishment calculation here in the buckets. As you're working your buckets and you're getting your math of sales running through these buckets, for every time you get a conversation started with someone down below in your priorities, you need to be adding 3 more to the top, right?
And why is that? So people are like, what? Why is that?
Well, I mean, the reality is your math sales might be a little bit different, but it's a good rule of thumb. It's all about reach, right? So, about half about half of B2B folks will be reachable in most channels, but some are like 30%. Think about your open rates on email,
Right.
right? If you're doing email, it actually should be, if your email open rate is 20%, it should be 5, right? Because you're only able to reach, for every new one you put in the top, you're only able to actually get 5 or 1 out of 5 into priority, right? Because it's 20%.
Right.
So 50% is just a good, or 3 or 33% is a good rule of thumb based on your ability to reach. If it's much higher, then it's more like 1-to-1, but people then won't replenish enough. So 3 is a really good rule of thumb for backfilling your list to ensure you're always having enough net new leads running through, and keeping your math of sales nice and tight.
Well, so now you've made quite the pivot, right? So you were working with Connect and Sell for a while, and it was all about quantity. I don't want to say all about quantity, but it was a massive quantity play because he had the tool. And it seems like with this bucket methodology, you've made a massive switch. I mean, if you looked at your expected attempts the old way that you were doing strictly through Connect and Sell, and you're looking at it now today, leveraging this bucket technique or this bucket process, how much of a difference is there?
Oh yeah, no. Just to be clear, I haven't made the shift at all. Like that's why I've always used Connect and Sell. Connect and Sell has always been a weapon for me to quickly move from a big list to a small list. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Most people don't use that correctly. Connect and Sell's power is to manufacture your follow-up, get to priority as quickly as possible. That's always been the benefit. Even at the sales developers, we used Connect and Sell because we use buckets. We use Connect and Sell to go from bucket 1. Actually, we use Connect and Sell to go from bucket 2 to bucket 3 because we had a whole research team. I bought a company called Steward, which would do all the research ahead of time and go from bucket 1 to bucket 2. Right. Call validate ahead of time. So, but Connect and Sell's value is trying to figure out who picks up the phone. Now, when I was live streaming and working as a sales rep, there's a requirement to use Connect and Sell to book appointments for yourself. But in my opinion, Connect and Sell's value is high velocity, getting to the people who pick up so you can manufacture your follow-up. Once you have your follow-up and your priorities, I've always had an interest. I never personally used Connect and Sell until last year to do my follow-ups. But if you noticed on the live streams at the end of the year, I shifted over. I wasn't even using Lightning. I was moving to Connect on Live Voice because if I've already connected with you before, I know you're a phone picker upper. I want to be prepared to have that conversation. And even if there isn't a direct path, like you have an assistant and things like that, I can start to gather more information. Like I said, you're prioritizing, you're trying to gather more information. You're trying to get that next shot, that next M&M shot in your priority bucket. So I don't recommend high velocity to your priorities. Once you know someone picks up, you don't need a shit ton of automation. You shouldn't need it. You can put that at the very top of the funnel. And so my breakthrough, no pun intended, with the Connect and Sell is like the value of the system really is having a team, specialized reps that will do your daily dials, if you will, right? So me as a rep, I don't sit in Connect and Sell waiting for a connect. I can outsource the bucketing system all the way to Connect. And then me as a rep, I only follow up with people who've picked up the phone before. So before you get your large list, you wait there. There's 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes before it connects because it's ripping through data. It's getting the bad stuff out. It's doing that. And Connect still does a good job with that. But that's still a waste of my time as a rep because those who pick up again. It's not like you only have one shot. So if I have another team who validates for me ahead of time, and then I only reach out to those who've picked up before, my dial to Connect will always be 10% or better for the most part. That's how Connect and Sell's data works. And that's what I'm bringing to the market now is, hey, you want to focus on having conversations with people who pick up the phone and know who doesn't, send me your list. I'll get you the ones who pick up, and then you can focus on follow up accordingly.
Interesting. So that's a 3 to 5 times increase in connection rate.
Yeah, I say 2. Brent, I would just say expect 2. It depends on your list, right? Your math sales is your math sales. But Brendan has been, Brendan McDonough just jumped on yesterday and shared his experience so far. He's seen a 5 to 8 lift on his connect rates. So he's using the system right now. He's got my specialized team making calls all day long. And then when someone picks up, it gets shifted over to him. He makes the calls behind it. And he's seen about, anywhere from like I said, 5 to 8x increase from the baseline. And that data is continuing to get published now. I've been doing the case studies on that. Got another customer that was I've used even within Connect and Sell the bucketing process where you just allow another team to do it ahead of time. The baseline dial to Connect of like an 83 goes down to a 5 on the Connect validated list.
So 83 dials down to 5 dials needed to have somebody pick up.
Yeah.
That's a massive, massive change.
Yeah, you just got to understand what you're doing is you're whittling down to those who pick up. It's the exact same list, but we're doing is focusing on those who pick up. Those who pick up tend to pick up again. It's just math. It's just.
Well, so and we're coming up on time, and I can't thank you enough. So for all of those who've been listening, if you have any questions, we'll give Ryan's contact information here on the end, or reach out to me or a couple of other that Ryan's working with. But what would you say to that sales rep, right? Because there's a couple of problems here. The sales reps are compensated to get the meeting, or the sales reps are compensated for the right now. And what you're suggesting is delayed gratification here. What you're suggesting is a look into the future to know that I'm planting seeds, I'm tilling up the ground, I'm fertilizing it. Right? There's a lot of heavy lifting, hard work here. So what do you say to that rep of why in the world would I call somebody whenever they already told me no? Why would I call them back?
Yeah, I mean, you only call them back if in fact they're someone you think you can help, and so you call them back because there's misinformation and you're trying to identify timing. So if the assumption is that this is someone you might be able to help, and the first time they said no, it's probably not no to your product, it's just no to timing. And so you've got to go and try to keep manufacturing those follow-ups until that follow-up list until you get to the right time, right? In your market, 3% is buying now. So most people are going to tell you no because it's not right. It's not a priority.
It's easier to do. Yeah, it's easier to say no instead of thinking through things. And the parting thought on this is, you said talk to everybody once a quarter. Mm-hmm. How much does the market shift every single quarter? It's unbelievable.
Oh, so I mean, look at the public markets, right?
Yeah. So it's not, don't use this as gospel in that I have to call everyone every quarter. I'm thinking if they're under a 3-year contract, maybe that one you call once a year, then every 6 months. And then once they're coming up closer to the contract, then you're at a quarterly basis there. I would think, if not sooner.
Yeah. I mean, depends on how big of a market you're selling into. If you only have, most people have a much larger market than they think. And that's going to dictate where you focus your time. Look, if I only have 100 potential people I can help ever, well, first of all, I wouldn't take that job as a salesperson. So as an entrepreneur, well, you better be talking to them every quarter. I don't care if they're in 3 years, right? That's your market. You need to go and earn those relationships, build those relationships, and it's important. If you're a sales rep, again, I wouldn't take that job. So, just prioritize your time on those that are closest to revenue first. It's kind of a simple idea.
Well, Ryan, you've been, as always, so insightful. Tons of stuff here. Thanks so very much. So we talked about your best hacks. We talked about your resource, 10-day MBA. Let's talk about the book here, Outbound Sales No Fluff, which hits the bucket list. We're going to get Ryan's link to his what would it say, guide to this. So
it's a guide to buckets, yeah.
Guide to buckets. So we'll get that on here. So Ryan, who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why should people reach out to you?
Yeah. I mean, you can reach out to me if you want to talk about any of this stuff, sales and go to market. If you're a founder, CEO, trying to figure this stuff out for the first time, or if you're a rep who's trying to, get off their feet and really start to have success, give me a ring. My number's in the headline of my LinkedIn profile. Give me a call, connect with me on LinkedIn, and just don't spam me.
And Ryan's not on there 15 minutes a month. He's on there a little bit more. So, hey, Ryan, I can't thank you enough. Really appreciate it. Super wealth of information. So on behalf of Ryan Reisert and Reisert Consulting, RC, the Racer, get after it, make some buckets, sell some stuff. Don't spam your TAM, as he says. Hey, thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.